with our very basic construction of what an angle is in mind, we can define a few special kinds of angles, where we say that an angle with measure less than 90 degrees is called acute. From there, if an angle is exactly 90 degrees, we call it right, where that would be something like that 12 to 3 we saw last time. If we have something between 90 and 180, like the 12 to 5, that is called obtuse. And we have a straight angle if the measure is exactly 180 degrees, where in some contexts we'll also take it a half step further and talk about things called reflex angles, but that's not really a thing we discuss in this class. And then once we have our idea for these constructions in terms of being acute, right, obtuse, and straight, we can talk about things called complementary and supplementary angles, where we have that a pair of angles is called complementary if their sum is 90 degrees. That is, in some sense, if they split a right angle. It doesn't have to be perfectly in half, it just has to be split apart. Things like 30 degrees and 60 degrees, or 12 and 78 degrees would be complementary because in each case, you add those up, you get 90. And similarly, we say that two angles are supplementary if they split a straight angle. That is, if they split almost in a sense a line, where in that case their sum is going to end up being 180 degrees. So, for example, 80 and 100, 120 and 60, 179 and 1 degree. Those would all be supplementary angles because they break the larger, more well-defined straight angle into two smaller parts. So let's get an example with how these kinds of constructions can be used to identify unknown angle measurements. For this, we are given the graph below and want to use it to find the measure of the angle DBC. So the first thing we probably need to do here is make sure we understand what the angle DBC is, not just by that question mark with a degree there that tells you it's what we're looking for, but we can see that's the upper one formed by the points D, B at the vertex, and C off to the left or right, depending on exactly what you're thinking. If you're, I'm going with forward left. But with those 3 points in mind, we can see the sort of place we're talking about there where, hopefully you can tell, that splits a right angle with what happens in the angle DBA. That is, DBA and DBC are complementary. So if we want to be able to find the measure of our angle DBC, then really all we have to do is just take the measures that we have here, 90 degrees for the whole thing, subtract from it 62 for the larger angle that we know, and we get the measure of angle DBC is 28 degrees. It's what's left over with the 62 taken up by the other angle. And if we extended that out and made it more straight, then we would take the same sort of idea, except we'd be subtracting 62 from 180. In this case, this would be a little bit bigger. It would end up being, well, something closer to 118 degrees, but different consideration, same sort of idea. So let's take one more example, thinking in terms of that kind of thing, maybe a slightly larger kind of angle.